WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar and around the world at wadr.org. First, our top stories. Mali opens trial of 6 people accused of plotting against a transitional government, including former security and presidency officials. Ghana announces final phase of emergency evacuation of nationals from South Africa following reports of attacks and insecurity. Nigeria arrests alleged fake government agency Director General Adeyemi amid controversy over a multi-million-dollar budget allocation.
Seems like we still have very weak institutions that are not able to do checks and balances, possibly don't have capacity for due diligence and due process.
Lawyer of Guinea-Bissau opposition leader Domingos Pereira denounces his detention as politically motivated.
Well, my reaction is simply to condemn this manipulation of the judicial system to neutralize a leading opposition figure.
Please stay tuned for the details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Veronique Joy.
We begin in Mali, where the trial of 6 people accused of allegedly plotting against the country's transitional government is opened before the criminal division of the Bamako Court of Appeal. Among those standing trial are former Director General of State Security Kasum Goita and former Secretary General of the Presidency Kalilu Doumbouya, who have been in detention since 2021. The defendants deny the allegations and remain presumed innocent as the court begins hearing the case. Atiye Winbila has more details in this report.
The long-awaited trial stems from an investigation launched in 2021, months after the transitional leadership took power under President Assimi Goita. The 6 defendants, comprising 3 former security officials and 3 civilians, are accused of conspiracy against the government and other offences linked to an alleged attempt to destabilize the transitional authorities. Those on trial include former Director General of State Security Kasum Goita, former Presidency Secretary General Kalilu Doumbouya, Chief Superintendent of Police Mustafa Diakite, Warrant Officer Abdullahi Ballo, and businessman Sandy Ahmed Saloum and Issa Somake, also known as Jos. The case has been marked by years of legal proceedings, appeals, and prolonged pretrial detention. Although 2 of the accused had some charges dismissed during the investigation, prosecutors appealed that decision, allowing the case against all 6 defendants to proceed. The defense has consistently rejected the allegations, arguing that the arrest and lengthy detention were unlawful and is seeking the acquittal of all the accused. The prosecution is expected to present its evidence during the trial, while the defense will challenge the charges before the court delivers its verdict at a later date. Under Malian law, all 6 defendants remain presumed innocent until proven guilty by the court.
That was Atiye Wimbila with that report. Meanwhile, Ghana's government says the final phase of its emergency evacuation of nationals from South Africa will begin on July 25th. This comes after President John Dramani Mahama approved funding through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to repatriate nearly 900 Ghanaians who had opted to return home. It follows months of xenophobic attacks that forced many Ghanaians to seek government assistance and is expected to conclude the country's emergency repatriation program. WADR's Accra's correspondent Nadede Tete reports.
The latest evacuation is expected to bring the curtain down on one of Ghana's largest emergency consular operations in recent years. In a video broadcast from Pretoria on Tuesday via social media, Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, Benjamin Kwashi, urged beneficiary citizens to cooperate, stressing that only those already registered and screened will be evacuated.
The date is that we'll start the repatriation of the 900 that have been left here on the 25th of July. We'll come to the various places where you are lodged. We'll transport some of you from all the provinces to come down. I want us to be very clear on the modality so that nobody gets it wrong. One, we are not doing new registrations yet. We are going according to those who have been registered and screened. We are traveling from the 25th of this month. The groups will be notified. Those groups that are going to be the first group, second, third, fourth, fifth, until we are done, will notify all of you.
The evacuation program was triggered by recurring xenophobic attacks that swept through parts of South Africa earlier this year, forcing hundreds of foreign nationals, including Ghanaians, to flee their homes and businesses. Many sought refuge in churches, community shelters, and hotels, while Ghanaian diplomats worked with South African authorities to account for citizens and facilitate their return. 3 government-sponsored airlifts have already brought nearly 1,000 Ghanaians, easing pressure on temporary shelters and reducing the number of citizens awaiting assistance. Once the July 25 operation is completed, Ghana expects to wind up the emergency evacuation program, with any subsequent requests for assistance to be handled through the country's normal diplomatic and consular channels. For WADR, Nadede Tete, Accra.
We head to Côte d'Ivoire, where more than a month ago, after the demolition of homes in the Kumasi Campament area of Abidjan, hundreds of displaced families are still struggling to rebuild their lives. The eviction, carried out as part of an urban restoration campaign, left many without permanent shelters. While some have found refuge with relatives, others remain at the demolition site or in a temporary accommodation, facing difficult living conditions and an uncertain future. Christopher Teacher has more details in this report.
Under a grey sky, the drone of motorcycle taxis set the rhythm of life in Kumasi Kompema. At first glance, the neighborhood seems to have regained its usual bustle. Yet, just a few meters from its entrance, the scene changes dramatically. On the edge of the Ebriye Lagoon, mountains of rubble stretch as far as the eye can see, silent witnesses to the violence of the eviction. Amid the debris, makeshift shelters made of scrabbled sheet metals, tarpaulins, and scraps of fabric still house families left homeless. Among them is Dao Yakuba in his 40s, a father of 8, struggling to imagine a future after the destruction of his home.
Well, for the moment, this is home. We haven't won yet. If we win, we will leave. There's no one for me. It will be okay. There are 10 of us here because I have 8 children, and then there's me and my wife. We often manage here at the school facility. We go and get some food from school, so that's where we often get a little thing to come and fend for ourselves.
Since the bulldozers arrived, these families say they have been left to fend for themselves. In this now unsanitary environment, each day is a struggle for survival. They express a profound sense of abandonment.
We can't really talk about that. Actually, all of this is God who confided in the children and the women. It's God.
It's the mosquitoes. Even though we've tied mosquito nets inside, they are biting us. We are abandoned. We are even cold. We can't even sleep. Look at the babies there. Where will we go?
Beyond the material hardship, the psychological wounds remain deep. Under a makeshift shelter, improvised with corrugated iron sheets and scraps of fabric, men gather daily and try to find solution to their distress.
A report by our correspondent Marcel Arisson-Blay in Abidjan, voiced by Christopher Teacher.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We now head to Nigeria, where police authorities have arrested Adeyemi, the self-acclaimed Director General of the fake Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotion Council. A warrant for his arrest was issued by a federal high court in Abuja after he failed to appear on charges of forgery, fraud and impersonation. The development comes after several weeks of intense public scrutiny surrounding the fake government agency, which received approximately $200 million from the country's national budget. Our correspondent Yechenu Sasitu reports.
Adeyemi was in Osun State following a manhunt ordered by the Federal High Court in Abuja. Justice Mohammed Umar had earlier issued a bench warrant after Adeyemi failed to appear before the court to answer an 8-count charge filed against him by the police. The charges include alleged forgery, fraud and impersonation linked to the activities of the controversial Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotion Council, an agency the federal government says does not exist. According to the police, Adeyemi allegedly forged an appointment letter purportedly issued by President Bola Tinubu and bearing the signature of the President's Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, to present himself as Director General of the agency. His arrest comes amid ongoing investigations into how the fictitious agency allegedly found its way into the national budget, a development that has prompted separate probes by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC) and the National Assembly. The court has adjourned the matter until September 30, when Adeyemi is expected to be arraigned. The PFIPC controversy has intensified calls for tighter oversight of public institutions and greater transparency in Nigeria's budgeting and verification processes to prevent similar incidents in the future. For WADR, Yechenu Sasitu in Abuja.
In Guinea-Bissau, the ongoing detention of opposition leader and former Prime Minister Domingos Pereira continues to spark strong reactions. Pereira, who has been held in pretrial detention since July 10th, faces charges over his alleged involvement in 2 attempted coups. However, he denies the accusations. WDR spoke to one of Pereira's lawyers, Saïd Larifu. Here is an excerpt of the interview.
Well, my reaction is simply to condemn this manipulation of the judicial system to neutralize a leading opposition figure. Everyone knows this is a politically motivated action aimed at excluding Mr. Domingos and his political party, which is, after all, the main political party in Guinea-Bissau, from the upcoming elections. Those who staged the coup on November 26, who prevented the announcement of the presidential election results, those who are in power illegally, are the ones persecuting my client for a supposed attempted coup. Even the most serious observers know this is a manipulation of the judicial system for political ends. First of all, his state of mind is very combative. He is very calm. He is a statesman who knows he has a destiny tied to the future of this country. He also has a destiny tied to the future of the African continent. So he is a statesman, very calm, but determined to lead his fight. And secondly, my client was never granted freedom. He was taken from the detention center to his home, but he was not at all free at home since he could not receive visitors, and his house was surrounded by military trucks that were there 24 hours a day.
That was Saïd Larifu, and he is one of the lawyers representing Guinea-Bissau's opposition leader, Domingos Pereira. Liberia's House of Representatives has approved an electoral threshold resolution that could significantly reshape the country's electoral map ahead of future elections. The proposal, which now awaits Senate consideration, would increase the number of electoral constituencies from 73 to 89 based on the 2022 national consensus. Supporters say the measure fulfills a constitutional requirement, but critics argue otherwise. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
The House of Representatives on Tuesday endorsed the report of its Committee on Elections and Inauguration and passed the electoral threshold resolution, forwarding it to the Liberian Senate for concurrence. Committee Chairman Thomas Romokuya said the proposal is backed by Articles 39, 80D, and 80E of the Constitution following the 2022 census, which recorded Liberia's population at 5.25 million, up from 3.47 million in 2008. However, the decision has drawn criticism from civil society. Hado Edu is the executive director for Integrity Watch Liberia.
If you add 14 new seats, that will give you 2,520,000 per year. This is additional cost on the state. We are saying democracy must now become economically unsustainable.
Several Liberians are also rejecting the proposal, arguing that creating more constituencies would merely benefit lawmakers to do additional legislative seats instead of addressing the country's pressing economic and social needs.
This is a mockery and affront to the Liberian people. When the nation's population remains largely undercounted and citizens are economically disenfranchised, we do not need more lawmakers. We need jobs. We need private sector investment. We need sustainable income opportunities for our people.
Some lawmakers have questioned the legality of the resolution, describing it as unconstitutional and calling for adherence to the Constitution. The proposed resolution now heads to the Liberian Senate, where lawmakers will decide whether to concur with the House or subject it to further review. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You're still listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Mali opens trial of 6 people accused of plotting against the transitional government, including former security and presidency officials. Ghana announces final phase of emergency evacuation of nationals from South Africa following reports of attacks and insecurity. Nigeria arrests alleged fake government agency director general Adeyemi amid controversy over a multi-million-dollar budget allocation. Lawyer of Guinea-Bissau's opposition leader Domingos Pereira denounces his detention as politically motivated. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and the sports news. Stay with us.
Connecting Ghana to West Africa. This is Nadidi Tete in Accra, and you're listening to WADR 94.9 FM, Dakar.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, education ministers from about 15 African countries are expected to begin a 3-day summit today in Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi, aimed at addressing the continent's growing learning crisis and reducing what organizers describe as educational poverty. The Foundational Learning Exchange Flex 2026 will bring together ministers, policymakers, and development partners to discuss solutions to challenges facing education systems, including funding shortages, rapid population growth, conflict, and climate-related disruptions. We will be following the development in our upcoming news bulletins. However, authorities in Guinea have launched a response to widespread allegations of an exam leak that disrupted this year's national examinations. Report of leaked test papers affected several key exams, with some examination centers forced to replace papers during the test. In response, the Minister of Pre-University Education, Alpha Bakar Bari, has suspended several officials linked to the examination process pending further inquiries. However, the National Education Union called on the ministry to ensure a rigorous investigation to identify all those responsible for the malpractice. Here is an extract of Pepe Balamu, Secretary General of the National Education Union.
La plupart
Most of the department's senior officials own private schools. It was these private schools that were used as exam subjects. The real accomplices are those around the minister, in his office, and within his departments. They are the ones who must answer for this leak of exam questions and for all the irregularities observed in the organization of these exams. This must be the subject of a genuine investigation to determine responsibility. The minister must take full responsibility, as this is clearly a campaign of sabotage.
That was Pepe Balamu, Secretary General of the National Education Union in Guinea.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
For our guest interview this afternoon, we head to Nigeria, where the arrest of Adeneyi Adeyemi, the self-acclaimed Director General of the so-called Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotion Council, has raised broader questions about oversight, accountability, and how an alleged fake government institution was able to operate and attract public fund. Adeyemi is facing allegations of forgery, fraud, and impersonation after authorities said the agency he represented did not exist. The controversy has also sparked debate over the systems in place to verify government structures and prevent abuse of public resources. To discuss the implication of this case and what it reveals about governance and institutional safeguards in Nigeria, I spoke with Jide Ojo, a Nigerian development consultant and public affairs analyst.
What stood out for me mostly is the weakness of Nigerian democratic institutions. It would seem like we still have very weak institutions that are not able to do checks and balances, possibly don't have capacity for due diligence and due process, or we are actually dealing with multi-institutional corruption. Why I'm saying this is someone brings a fake appointment letter from the office of the Chief of Staff to the President, presents it to the office of the Secretary to the Federal Government, and that letter is honored, and from there you have all others removed, all obstacles cleared, to the extent that the guy could get police escorts, could arrange meetings, could hold storming, could have an office, have a web address, even open 3 bank accounts with Central Bank of Nigeria, even when people applied and got diplomatic passport. It's either that we have severe institutional weakness or we have a very sophisticated corruption network that bypasses due process.
So what implications do you think this would have on Nigeria's governance systems?
It's actually not looking good. It's a very bad optics for the Nigerian government, because if a fake agency could find its way into the Nigerian budgeting system, got an allocation in this year's budget, this is quite worrisome and very concerning, because a system that cannot fact-check simple appointment letter that allows itself to be used for fraudulent activities by an individual or a group of influential, that system is porous.
So what reforms would you recommend to strengthen transparency and make it more difficult for individuals to impersonate government officials or institutions?
Let's have a fully automated bureaucratic system. The Federal Civil Service should be automated, and then there should be capacity building of the staff, as well as organogram on how government institutions work. And I'm saying this against the background that assuming that this was a genuine error and not an intentional undermining or circumventing of the civil service rules. So if we have a fully automated system, it then becomes easy to trail some of these kind of shady deals. Beyond that, there should be a proper oversight of all these government institutions. Quite unfortunately, the National Assembly, which also has the constitutional responsibility of overseeing ministries, departments, and agencies, are also caught in this web because they were the one that endorsed the appropriation of 1.3 billion for this fake agency. But that would be a genuine mistake because they actually are not the one that prepared the budget. We have the Nigerian Budget Office, which is primarily responsible for that. But it's a learning curve for MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies to now start asking the right questions, particularly when they receive documents that does not seem to look right. Because what we have also learned is that, first, the Office of Chief of Staff to the President does not issue appointment letter for presidential appointee. Two, the guy allegedly designed a fake letterhead that contains phone numbers and forged the signature of Chief of Staff to the President.
That was Jide Ojo, a Nigerian development consultant and public affairs analyst. All right, time for some sports news. And Senegal's Ministry of Youth and Sport has ordered the Senegalese Football Federation to stop all public communication related to the national team's participation in the 2026 World Cup. The decision follows a press conference by the Federation President Abdoulaye Fall, where he discussed the Lions World Cup campaign and the Federation's move to terminate the contract of national coach Pap Chow. The ministry said the measure is aimed at preserving national unity and protecting the country's image, while announcing that a full assessment of Senegal's World Cup participation will be conducted. Now, Morocco's coach Mohamed Ouahbi has defended the Atlas Lions' performance at the 2026 World Cup despite their quarterfinal elimination by France. Ouahbi said Morocco's campaign should be assessed as a whole, highlighting the team's progress and the quality of their performance throughout the tournament. He admitted the team struggled to create enough chances against France but rejected criticism of his players, saying they gave their best effort. Ouahbi also defended captain Ashraf Hakimi, describing him as one of the best right backs in the world. Spain have secured their place in the 2026 FIFA World Cup final after defeating France 2-0 in the semi-final in Dallas, United States. Mikel Oyarzabal opened the scoring before the penalty spot before Pedro Porro doubled Spain's lead in the second half. France, led by Kylian Mbappe, struggled to break down Spain's defense despite several attacking attempts. Spain will face the winner of the England-Argentina game in the final, while France will play in the third-place match. However, anticipate the England-Argentina game later today. And that's all for the sports news. And with that, we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maudo Ju for their technical assistance. Remember, you can interact with us via our social media applications and also the pages, which is X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Veronica Njai. Stay safe.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverside County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.